Alright guys, quick intro. Welcome back to the shop. I'm Chad. This is Carter Engineering and Fabrication week 14 of 2025. Some cool stuff to share this week. 3D printed press brake dies, fitting up the widened steel wheels. Similar to last week. If you missed that video, please check it out. But some cool stuff happening. Let's get into it. So we're picking this right back up, just like we did last week. I'm laying out the laser cut blanks on a 1-inch pattern, just as something quick and easy to visualize as I bump bend this into a 180-degree arc. So real quickly, running through with a square, doing both blanks at the same time, learning from my inefficiencies from last week, but ultimately using the same principle. I'm going to readjust the camera in just a second, and we're going to zoom in on the 3D printed dies. And in the dies, I actually incorporated a bump stop to add like a squareness component, as well as the return springs that I mentioned last week. So the addition of those two things alone was a huge increase in the amount of time it took to to start from each end, bump approximately 1/3, and then finish up bending the middle. You want to do that way you have enough clearance. In this case, the overall frame has a pretty good amount of clearance, but you'll see in a moment, I try to start from one end and do about 1/3, and then flip the part around. So here we go, adjusting the camera. The red pieces are 3D printed with PLA, just your basic, nothing fancy, just basic PLA. So going through, I've got a mark on it, and I'm trying to count pumps. I should have put a dial indicator on it to try and be a little bit more precise, but ultimately you can manipulate this around quite a bit, and I'll show that in just a moment. But you can see on the face closest to the camera, there's a guide fence printed into the lower die, and then I have that clamped in place so it doesn't drift left to right. So going about every inch, and the upper die having a softer radius on it really helped a lot to not have like these distinct bend lines. The first wheel definitely had those, and it kind of fits the motif of this thing that I'm learning as I go, so I'm not going to go back and redo it. But this was way more successful and significantly faster. If you look closely, you can see the compression springs, and I used some welding wire to hook them kind of like a screen door closure, so they're being used as extension springs, but that let me use some springs that I was able to just find in my toolbox, and this worked out pretty well. Some improvements to do to really dial this, but for one-off stuff like this where you can't justify a lot of cost, this really works very well. I'm very happy with it. We'll switch camera positions in just a minute, and then you'll see it. You can start to see that I got a little overzealous with the bending. Not a big deal in this case. It can be manipulated back. So here's the part in place. Trying to get an overhead view so you can kind of see. And then I'm trying to mark like areas where I think it needs a little more bending. So anywhere it needs more bending, I'll put it back in the press brake. Anywhere it needs a little less bending, I'll just kind of bump it back open on my makeshift anvil. I've got this butcher block, hammer anvil station that I roll around, and I machine flat the top of the railroad iron to act as, as a kind of an improv anvil of sorts. So here I am just using that as 2 points and then hitting the center to try and straighten out some of that curvature. Words are hard, guys. So no rocket surgery here, just adjust it till it looks good. You can manipulate it a little bit in the welding process, but I want to get it pretty dialed. So spending a little time here, and again, a roller, I could have got it a lot better, but this is what I had, so I'm very confident based on the end result, the run out that I was able to achieve, that things are going to work out fine. And if not, I'm probably a couple years away from worrying about anything like that. So not concerned at all. A little bit of tweaking, and not actually that much time really to get this adjusted and dialed in. There you can see the final fit. It's looking pretty decent. So skipping a lot of the mundane work, here it is aligned, welded, dressed out, and looking pretty sharp. Alright, so we're recording this again a little bit faster because it was a touch hard to watch at 2x speed, but here I am getting the Redline Engineering manual tire changer out. I've got to pull it out from under the pilot racking so that the head can articulate up enough, and getting the wheel clamped in and the valve stem snapped in place is what you see here. Pretty uneventful so far. This stand isn't really intended for tires of this width, so you can lace the head of the tool in, or in this case I'm just fighting it probably more than I should be, honestly, to get the tire started and snapped over. Ended up using a couple pry bars and just walking the bead over the tire, over the wheel lip. With a little more, initial speed, I think people can get them to snap in place. I wasn't able to. This is a new tire, so it's never been stretched on, and it was a little stiff from being cold. So there's a joke in there somewhere. Moving on. I did fight this a comical amount. I always forget how to mount tires until I do it, and I do not do it enough. I'm not mad about that fact. Being a steel wheel, and this wheel is just rattle can, so I'm not so worried about scratching it or anything at this point. I'm actually mounting them before the final finish, that way I can do a leak test after all the welding and just make sure that everything's good. So here we are getting the duckbill down, clamped in place, and then I have the plastic bead hold down tool thing right here that's getting installed. So these fought me a good bit. Actually fought me quite a lot, but able to succeed in the end, I promise. It's a 30 series tire, so it's not super easy to mount. So, and a second set of hands would have been ideal here to get to be able to hold the bead down and then also do the rotation. I've often thought about adding a gear motor and something to power the rotation portion, or ultimately this does what I need it to, and the price was fair for a pretty good machine. So here we are. Yep, just able to get it snapped over, and complain about it all I want, but it really didn't take that long. It wasn't that bad. So get the machine tucked back away under the pallet racking and ready for the next 3 wheels once I have those ready to go. So jumping back into the shop, I'm gonna pull the valve stem in just a moment, and I like to blow it up with an air gun just because I can get pump the air in a little bit faster. That's just some goo on the surface. The rim's not scratched or anything. So getting the valve stem out, or the valve stem insert, whatever the guts are of the valve stem. Yeah, so here we are blowing it up, and we'll hear it pop in a moment. Bam, one, and then this back still hasn't popped, so give it a little more air. Feel like I look like that evil clown from the movie Spawn, if you guys remember that movie, with the really strange hair and anyway, random obscure reference. I'll throw a screenshot up here, but valve stem in, put some air in it, and I'm really excited with how this is turning out. I'm not set on the black. I'd like to do a different color, but like I said, I'm just going to leak test these, use them for mock-up, and whenever we're ready, these will get broke back down, and get the final paint, powder coat, whatever, get the center cap stuff dialed in. So really happy with how these are looking. It's a pretty beefy 19 by 11.5 steel wheel for a modest price. I've got too many hours wrapped up in these to be feasible, but this is a fun learning experience. So here we're looking at the original wheel hubcap, which is wild. These are 14-inch hubcaps, so literally covered the whole original OE wheel. That tickles me to just a huge extent. But I trimmed around the little cutouts there to take it from a hubcap to like a center cap. Did a rough trim on the portaband, and then here I am going through with the tin snips and doing a closer to final trim. And then I'll run back and do just a quick touch up on the deburring wheel to take off any razor blade edges. But this seemed like a pretty easy way to not risk overcutting or getting too aggressive. Definitely tell I sit at a desk, my hands are weak because they were tired after doing one of these. But aside from them being kind of nipple-like in shape, they look pretty good on the back wheels. On the front wheels, without that huge lip, they stick out too far in the center. So I'm noodling some ideas of how to utilize these and not make billet versions, just to save a little bit of cost. But also I really like having that original element being used. So here you see that they fit the wheel sizing almost perfectly. I'll throw some still pictures in here in just a moment. But yeah, there's the before and after of the hubcap to center cap, and really I'm really liking the look of this. The wheels that'll cover a big brake kit, and the cost spent so far is pretty reasonable. So this has been a lot of fun. So the last big hurdle is getting the frame welded together, at least welded enough to be able to take it off the table. Doing a quick double check here before we do any welding on it, just to verify that the front to back links, nothing's racked or out of place, and double checking that my marks transferred through. So everything looks to be in order. You can see I've got everything clamped up, the little red C-clamps, trying to keep everything tight. So pull out the MIG welder and let's at least button the top and vertical part of this, the stuff that we can get to with it on the table. It welded out nice, and I'm pretty happy with it. So I will get it off the table and upside down to weld the bottom out, and weld in some of the future stuff. But no complaints. Tried to pick the order where it would hold its shape and not distort. So doing the vertical part and the inside, and then I'll go back and do the rosette into that thickness plate that I added last time. Trying to practice some of my my hand movement, because that's kind of an awkward deal to try and sweep that through. But ultimately it welded out pretty nice. This is using the Prime Weld MIG 180. Nice little machine. Here doing a hot tack and then drawing that gap in a little bit. It did pretty nice. So no concerns at all. Jumping over to the driver's side, and similar deal. I had done the one weld on this side just to lock the overall shape in, and then coming back. So here you can see the vertical lap weld, the plug or rosette weld, whatever you want to call that, and then the top, and then the inside. So I'm going to cut some stiffeners to put in there, but real happy with this. So this part's just a reminder, the body's sitting on some casters, pretty naked at this point, and easy enough to, with some shuffling, some Tetris, get it over to the lift bay and up in the air. I'm real close to either setting the frame on the ground or putting the body on the frame on the table. Whew. I rushed the intro a little bit, so let's take our time for the 28% of you that are still here and listening. One, thank you for watching. I do appreciate it. This week was kind of a hard week. I feel like I didn't have a lot of motivation to get work done, and only in putting the video together did I really see that I actually accomplished a fair amount. I had quite a bit of work to do that wasn't camera worthy or wasn't video worthy, and that's fine. but I want to share something cool and interesting every week. So I was able to get enough done this weekend to put a video together that I'm honestly pretty happy with. I'm really stoked for the next step, and that's what I've been pushing for, is to get the body on the frame and hopefully enough of the suspension put together, the drivetrain, that I can have the wheels and tires installed. I've got a rough plan of how to narrow the rear axle enough that I can bolt the wheels and tires on, set it at ride height, see if it's going to look like my original images of the car on just the mock-up tire sizes, and just I think a lot of it's just to see it in that state, to be motivated to continue. I'm getting really excited about what this car is going to be. I made a comment in the voiceover about the last hurdle, and that's a joke because I'm far from any of the last hurdles of anything, but maybe the last hurdle of that 10 minutes of that day, I don't know. Anyway, if you made it this far, again, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. I like bringing you guys along. I like documenting my work and being able to say that I have a vlog of this year of what I've been working on. I think this car, if it hits my vision, is going to be really cool. So I think that's enough for this week. All hail the algorithm. Like, subscribe, comment, what have you. See you guys next week.